Hello, everybody. This is William Del Pilar, and welcome to Fired Up, your source for Thursday evening conservative talk. As a former NFL analyst and fantasy football pioneer, it seems odd that there's football on and I'm actually doing politics, but I love it much more than my previous career. And tonight, we rip the mask off of three massive stories the mainstream media and Democrats and every leftist progressive, whatever you want to call them, doesn't want us to connect. First, this one hurts. But Tucker Carlson exposed from platforming Holocaust revisionists to sitting down with anti Semite and racist Nick Fuentes to having convenient amnesia. He's been accused of for years of quietly being funded by Qatar. And it's looking more and more like that may be the case. We'll talk about it and you can start chiming in as well. He's the same man who says, I'm just asking questions. Well, tonight we are too, because right now he looks like the most successful mainstreamer of anti Semitic tropes in modern American media. Him and Daryl Cooper, that is, and Nick Fuentes, and the list could go on. But then we destroy the Washington Post's latest war crime smears with some receipts. And then we have a bombshell broken by Alan Berenson. He's he's exposed some leaked FDA memos that now admit at least up to 10, I want to say up to 10 American children died from RNA COVID shots, mostly myocarditis. And now he reports that black box warnings and total pediatric pools are on the table. The same agencies that mandated these shots for toddlers are finally quietly being forced to admit the critics were right all along. You hear that, Peter Hotez? You freaking little slime ball, money grubbing, will say anything for a buck would-be doctor. These are three stories, one theme. The people who told you to trust them and the news and the data, they've kind of been lying to us from the start. Maybe not Tucker so much. I know the beautiful Miss Annette Ross is going to disagree. She's a big Tucker supporter, I think. But regardless, grab your fire gear because the heat is rising on this episode of Fired Up. And with that, my friends, let us bring on my fellow panelists, Miss Annette Ross. Annette, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, William?
I'm hanging in there, and I'm going to do this like I've done the last few shows. There's a couple topics I did not put in the notes. We're going to ad lib. What's your thoughts on what's happening in Minnesota in terms of the Somali corruption, where supposedly over $1 billion have been found to be lost in fraud that they have participated in. And it's literally, I don't want to say the whole community, you can't condemn one whole community, but quite a bit of Somalis are being found in this web of corruption, including an individual who said he was feeding like 4,000 families a day or a week or something, in essence was feeding nothing. And I want to get your thought on that for specifically.
On that first, I was all ready to go in on Tucker. Well, let me just say something anecdotally first. I just recently was with a nurse who was telling me that her mom and dad live in Minnesota and was talking about what was happening there and how they needed to move out because of the Somalian problem, how frightening it's been for a lot of the families, and how many people have left the state because of it. And so, I know that's anecdotal because I talked to one person who happens to be a nurse in San Diego, but I had no idea about her background. So I was just sort of curious. And she said that since the George Floyd riots, Minneapolis has not been the same. And then somehow that conversation just led to this Somalian problem. And so I didn't realize the majority beyond Somalia, the majority of Somalians live in Minneapolis. Beyond, living in the country of Somalia, right? There's the most living in the Minneapolis. So that's sort of like a fascinating statistic that I had no idea about. So does this surprise me that they're finding a way into the tentacles of money and doing fraud and abusing the system and just I don't know. I feel like sneaky, insidious ways of doing that. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, because William, my immediate thought is always the goodness of human beings. I know through our show and our time on the show, I'm changing and learning. I've learned my own little tiny experience in politics, but they're taking advantage, and I do think they've made it a very tribalistic place now. And there is a lot of even infighting within these Somalian groups in Minnesota. That's another thing that this nurse was sort of explaining to me.
I've always known about the Somalian community. I've actually used to go to Minnesota a few times a year in my previous life for business. They're a beautiful area. But at the end of the day, you can't bring in cultures that refuse to assimilate. And that's what we've been doing for the last 40, 50 years now.
But not them.
What's that?
Not just with them.
That's why I said communities who don't want to assimilate. So they're not the only ones. There's all in El Cajon. We have what do they call them? The Coptic Christians. They have their own community out there in El Cajon area here in San Diego, but they tend to assimilate, as Christians. So the Somalians have always been a problem or an issue of not wanting to assimilate. And look, Ilhan Omar represents that community. And she has said publicly her allegiance is to Somalia. That's why my parents came here, my dad from Puerto Rico, my mom from Panama, and I am of the belief, unless you're a born citizen, you should not be allowed to run for office.
That's correct. I agree. I was just going to say that. Yes.
And people say that's anti-American. I'm like, no, it's not. And here's why. At the end of the day, you have to keep the American value. You have to keep what made this country so exceptional, what allowed this country to save the world not once, not twice, what allowed the country to overcome its own systemic failures, such as slavery through a civil war and then through the civil rights. We can look in the mirror and see our wrongs. You cannot bring a country, a culture in to be anti-American. I've never cared for whether it's Chinatown, Koreatown, or Little Havana or things like that.
Little Italy.
Literally, but unless they assimilate. Now, some of those communities are in name only. They're like just restaurants and stuff like that. But some of those communities, literally, they want nothing to do with America. And now we've shifted to America's bad, America's evil, including a lot of Latinos, a lot of Black Americans. That's the culture they're brought up in. This doesn't sprout out of nowhere. And it all starts politically. So I think this whole Somali issue is a product of how our country has evolved and how we've let this happen. And the reason I say this to the audience out there, it's simple. If you don't keep the values that made this country exceptional, we do become a bleep hole and we become no better. And eventually we will die of corruption and we'll be no better than what is happening in Europe right now, Western Europe, with the cost of living for over 40 years. Europe has not contributed anything to the world, and if that happens in this country, then the bad actors will eventually win. Because if the U.S. is not there to stand up to bad people, who is? It's not Europe. It's not Latin America. It's not Japan. It's not South Korea. Who? Nobody. And that means the bad guys will take over. So I think this Somalia situation, it's just a product of what's happening to this country. And I do believe that Republicans need to use this as a strategic campaign tactic to show what happens with corruption. When you have programs that go from a few million to hundreds of million over a couple of years in handouts and you can't track it, and you have one party that is completely emboldened to it because the Somalians, through their political lobbying in Minnesota, said, if you don't allow this to keep happening, you're not going to have us as a voting bloc. And that's kind of come out. So we need to jump on this and use this as a tactic.
But two points to that, and I totally agree with everything that you just said. One, the point about not having them in office, because you know what, America might not be their priority.
It's not.
Well, right, and that's your point. That's why we should have that as a guideline and a principle for people that are in elected office in this country. But the other thing, I don't know if you know this, but just I think a day ago, maybe 2 days ago tops, there was a rally in New York City, a Muslim rally, saying that all people had to have Allah as their number one God, that they look looked to or whatever. But I guess the point you're making, and the point we both understand, and this is what I want you to answer because you're more well versed in some of this than I am. This is happening. We see it happening. We don't want it to be happening. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? They voted in Mamdani, right?
Oh, it's easy. It's easy. We got to take the school system back. We got to take the school system back and educate our kids. And parents have to become better parents and understand the school is not there to educate their kids. They're indoctrinating your kids. And no, your kid is not especially exceptional. They're no different than little Johnny down the road. Every kid is little Johnny at one time or another. It's human nature. So we need better parenting. We need our government to stop being bought by corporate lobbyists. Look, I am for capitalism, but we're into such crony capitalism, such corruption with the H-1B visas, with the big pharma owning, and it's the American taxpayer paying the price. And even Trump is falling into this. You know, he endorsed some Texas Republican, 84 years old, or something. He's like a rhino. It's like, come on, man.
Talk about somebody who's cozying up to Qatar. I mean, I don't know. You think that Tucker is being paid by Qatar, but back to what we were saying. I'm just saying, like you're saying, the education system, and that's where we can begin to solve this problem. I'm not saying that I disagree with you, but you and I both know, because I have children, how long it's going to take to change that.
Well, no, it doesn't matter what we do. It's going to take a while to change the minds. It takes an exceptional event, 9/11, to bring America together, a World War II. We don't want that type of event to happen.
No.
So when an event like that doesn't happen, you have to take advantage of a Trump. And we have to support him. And that's why, and we have to stop being the, oh God, I'm trying to blank the term for the lackadaisical voter, the low propensity voter. We got to build a ground game. That we can do almost immediately. Build a ground game. We take a couple of years, do the knocking door to door, the having precinct captains. That's the spreading the word exponentially. What we have is we have a bunch of cronies in the Republican Party, locally, statewide, and national, who don't care about us, who use us, who abuse us. So we've got to clean our own house. And that's where it starts. Because here's the problem. We have given up in all the urban areas, all the urban cities.
I think you're right. The cities are disgraceful, but I don't think it's that I think that they're afraid. They don't want to change their life. If you stand up for the things you need to stand up for and you have the right message, you're running in fear right now. It's hard.
But you're missing the point. How did we get there?
William, what?
How did we get there? How did we get to the point now they run in fear? Because they were corrupt. They were happy. And the Democrats kept taking more and more ground to now a candidate is, I don't really want to go into a blue district. They may violently attack me. That wouldn't have happened 10, 15 years ago, but they weren't going into blue districts. They stopped it. So it takes a charismatic person to have the bravery to do that. That's why I look at all these people, and we both know a lot of them. I know of them. You may know them personally. And I don't have respect for many. If about 98% of them, I don't have respect for, because when push comes to shove, they're going to sell you out to please Mr. Schmuckatelli, who controls their purse strings. That's
the game.
We talk about Carl DeMaio a lot. Carl DeMaio doesn't need the Republican Party. He doesn't need those big donors. Why? He's got all those small donors. And that's how you do it, Well,
I mean, that's the ground game, right?
Yep, that's the ground. Carl DeMaio destroyed his opponent because he had a ground game. People in our county, people to the audience out there, Carl DeMaio is a local force that's growing in the state of California. In our county now fear Carl DeMaio because of what.
Well, let me pose the question to you. He's got a ground game, William, but is he serving the people that he is taking the money from? Is he making their lives?
Well, that's not relevant. The point is, what does no stop? It's not relevant because the point of discussion is, what does the Republican Party, not Carl DeMaio. Carl DeMaio is an example of a successful ground game. We can have a whole show on Carl DeMaio, and I don't want to digress into that. The point is, he has a ground game.
Got it.
And that's why he's destroyed his opponents.
Agreed. Okay.
And that's what happens with Republicans. Here's the goal. And then we digress and get off chasing what's this? Oh, what's this? And there's the goal,
Well, I think I think your solution to what's happening in the cities and how it's like the frog in boiling water concept. You put the frog in and you turn it up, it goes slowly, but it stays in. You put it in, it's boiling hot and it'll jump out. But we're just sort of like, our tolerance for what's happening in the cities is way too high. We think, oh, that's not going to, right? Okay. So,
oh, yeah, that's always the case. So it's not going to happen here. In fact, when did the cops finally start taking action up in Northern California, in San Francisco, when they were letting everybody get mugged, robbed, beat? They let them back out.
I think when Trump they threatened to
no. When all the thugs started going after the rich stores, they started entering those districts where all the richies live. Then and it started with the jewelry stores. Then you saw the cops going, we got to go arrest some people because those are our master's donors. It's not rocket science, but that's a quick fix, a ground game, which will take a cycle to do.
Okay.
Trump had a ground game because they all love Trump. I remember walking in 2015. All these people came out just for Trump, not the Republican Party. And I'm sick and tired of this Republican Party, whether it's San Diego County or whether it's a state level or national level, thinking they love to take Trump's credit. They will badmouth Trump, and then they will tell their candidates, don't mention Trump. But when Trump does all this, they act as if they did it. And then when Trump's out on the ballot, they get shellacked. We had a race in Tennessee that we won by 10 points, that we should have won by 30 points. That's how the Democrats do. They get the vote out. We were lucky, All right, real quick, J6. They've got a suspect for the pipe bomber, and he may have Antifa ties. Your thoughts?
Am I surprised?
Well, it's been 5 years. Did you actually think they were going to catch somebody?
No, and I don't know anything about the person that they've caught. I mean, I didn't think that was even on the radar anymore, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, I don't know anything about it actually, and I didn't know that they caught somebody. I mean, you're telling me this for the first time. I'm thinking to myself, I'm not surprised they have Antifa ties, but I thought we're even looking.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out more, but they had a big press conference. They said a big teamwork. This is key. This could blow wide open the January 6th lies that the mainstream media has perpetrated. I remember my former partner, Big John. We got into it. That was he tried to take over the government. I go, are you that stupid? How many guns do they have? They're casually white. I go, the cops are opening the door for them. The one person who died was an innocent 5'4".
I know that woman in San Diego. Yeah.
And then they go, what about the cops? They didn't die. If you get a fat, lazy, out of shape cop, and I'm sorry to the police and law enforcement, you got a responsibility. Stay your ass in shape, or don't be a cop. The guy has a heart attack or problems there. It was because of J6. No, it's because you're a fat ass and unhealthy. Take some damn responsibility for yourself, people. So this could blow that wide open because that was nothing but a coordinated attack to discredit Trump, the Russia hoax, the Ukraine call, the 2 impeachments, the J6 lies, then the political persecution. The Republican Party, see, that's the frog in boiling water. They got to the point they could do that. Where's the Republican Party? Running like a bunch of scared, no cojones munchkins. It's like these Republican senators and congressmen who are married, I feel for their wives because they're not married to a real man. They're married to the bunch of chumps there, and they need to start standing up for themselves and not the Massey types who grifts off his district and doesn't. There's been Justin Amash, a libertarian who ran as a Republican, Ron Paul, a libertarian, ran as a Republican, Thomas Massey, a libertarian who ran as a Republican. The Republican Party needs to kick them out because they don't help their constituents, but they stand on a pedestal, and nobody who's involved who has ideological beliefs, oh, they're good. No, they're not. They're losers, and they're getting rich off the taxpayer dime. That's the type of congressman we have.
We as Republicans help ourselves very much by talking too much about January 6th. Because isn't the point, it's sort of like the idea of in faith, you know them by their works, right? That's how you know. So I think as conservatives, this issue about January 6th, we're trying to get more people to understand our point of view and maybe even come to our side. And there's been so much bad information about January 6th. I don't necessarily think we're going to change any minds about it if they already believe what they believe. And I think, honestly, we should just move on from it. It was a
Nope,
bad,
not true.
bad
Disagree.
situation. Well, okay,
Disagree. Because they get away with it today, they're going to get away with it. And nothing has come out. Everything has been suppressed. This isn't like Jeffrey Epstein, where we're counting on third parties. We're looking at the evidence, the tapes, the film. That's black and white. That needs to come out. And Ray Epps is, and the fact that we have to find a way to hold accountable the J6 committee who illegally destroyed all the data and information they had, after their committee wrapped up, after they blamed Trump. They destroyed all the evidence. And we know why. Because there was a lot of evidence that contradicted what they were saying.
Their narrative, absolutely.
Yeah, we can't let that one go. Because if they do it to Trump, they're going to try to do it to Vance or Rubio or the next one. They don't stop. They get more emboldened. Why do you think they're scared to go campaign in blue districts? Because we have allowed Democrats to become violent without any
recourse.
Well, without any accountability. I mean, look, how many of these guys have gotten out and murdered people, raped young girls? I don't wish anyone to be raped, but by God, if it's somebody, maybe it should be a Democrat senator or congressman's kid instead of the innocent American Joe, because then they would sit there and see what's really happening. But no, they're the ones, their kids go to private school. Their kids has a security guard walking them back and forth. And I'm exaggerating. The rich ones do, not all of them. But the reporters are the worst of the lot. When Trump went to clean up D.C., they were probably saying, "Yeah, thank God, man. I'm tired of being scared to walk to my car. Yeah, I got mugged 2 months ago. This and that." But then what do they write? How dare Trump do that? We have a terrible country right now in terms of the people putting themselves, putting their ideology, and wishing ill, wishing harm, and are okay with the violence and justifying it. They're trying not to blame the Somalians about this. Well, it's not their fault the system's set up that way. Really? Oh my God, Yeah. All right, so let's move on here. Let's talk Tucker Carlson. So Tucker Carlson, everybody knows, he's become a controversial figure within the conservative circles. Back in 2006, he was a defendant of Israel. He has since made a 180-degree turn. That his pro-Israel stance didn't last pretty much after he left Fox. As his platform grew, so have his conspiracies, and the targets have shifted now to the Jewish nation and to also defending Venezuela. Because the culture is anti-gay, Maduro's okay in his books. Listen, you buffoon. That's the culture. Maduro has nothing to do with the culture. He promoted the Great Replacement theory of Soros, and there is truth to that. That's why you have communities like Somalia, these Muslim communities. You have the Islam. Yeah. So there's truth to that, and the data is out there. So I was with him with all of that, but then he started to sit there and change. He brought Daryl Cooper, who's just an average Joe who reads some books, and in my opinion, he's an anti-Semite. He defends Germany, Nazi Germany. He hosted Daryl Cooper, and Cooper claims Nazis lacked the intent or resources to systematically kill Jews. Tucker Carlson also said, well, Hitler had no plans to invade Britain. How do you know? Well, Hitler gave a speech saying they were going to take over the world. So he has become a blatant liar. Cooper, one of the guests he had, he portrayed the Holocaust deaths as logistical mishaps rather than genocide. And Carlson praised him as, quote, the most important popular historian in the United States, unquote. If that's the case, I'm a historian on UFOs, on Bigfoot, on American history, on Roman history, on philosophy, because I read tons of books, on politics. Just because you read a book doesn't make you a damn historian. Now, this obviously sparked backlash because it was easily debunked, not just from Jewish groups, but just like a lot of Brits were like, bro, this is what really happened. So Cooper, and the reason I'm getting into this is because Tucker is defending this. Cooper argued the Holocaust was an unintended consequence of Nazi unpreparedness. Hey, we're not really prepared to handle all these Jewish prisoners. Let's toss them in an oven. That's what he's pretty much saying. He claimed Nazis went in with no plan and simply threw millions into camps, obviously ignoring all the evidence. Him, and Tucker have said Churchill was a chief villain of World War II. Not Hitler, but Churchill. No, they allege Churchill's embrace of Zionism was financially motivated, implying shadowy financiers, Once revisionist is normalized, Carlson then turned his fire on Israel itself, clashing with allies and breaking MAGA orthodoxy. First, your thoughts on the fact he defended, and in my opinion, an anti-Semite in Daryl Cooper. Daryl Cooper goes by the handle Martyr Made. I actually followed him early on before he was big because he had some interesting philosophical comments. But as I followed him more and more, I was like, this guy's a freaking idiot. This guy's an anti-Semite. Boom, unfollow, because people can present themselves well early on. Your thoughts on that?
Well, let me first begin by saying my best history teacher I ever had said history is interpretation. I don't think she could be more right than that. I think that Tucker has evolved in his thinking. Let me just say that I'm a huge fan and I watch him all the time, including his Nick Fuentes interview and almost everything else he does. And I do not think he is an anti-Semite at all.
Hold on. What about his defense of Daryl Cooper? We're going to get to all that, but what about his defense of Daryl Cooper?
He is provocative at times. I think that he honestly is seeking the truth. I think he thinks that countries and leaders and people in power lie and tell stories, and sometimes we really don't know what's going on. I don't think he doesn't believe that the Holocaust happened. I mean, he obviously does. I've heard him say that he thinks that that's an abomination. But
in the past, you said he evolved. I say he's devolved. But he may have said that in the past, not since then. He praised Cooper, who says the Holocaust isn't what history has portrayed.
I think he was praising Cooper about his thoughts about Winston Churchill, which was the first time I ever heard anyone, because I've only heard Winston Churchill described as like a giant and a savior and literally the prominent figure of World War II. And I've read his speeches. I've never read any books about him, but I've read some of his speeches. And then, Tucker was saying, but were they invaded? No, they were not invaded. They were not one of the countries that was invaded by Germany. I mean, he was making that historical point, but they got into the war. They got into the war.
Whoa. That's a technicality because there were plans. The Germans had plans drawn up to eventually invade Britain. And the Blitzkrieg over the UK was part of the plan to soften them up, So that was already in the books. That was already in the book. Paperwork, his speeches, things of that nature. That's just it. It's out there. And Tucker and this Daryl Cooper purposely ignore the data, They ignore the data to sit there and throw out history because that's not taught anymore. Again, I'm more of a freaking historian of World War II than Daryl Cooper. I probably read as many books, saw as many films. I'm being sarcastic. My point is, he's no historian. He's a conspiracy theorist.
He's not Victor Davis Hanson.
And Tucker's
that's for sure.
Exactly. He's not Victor Davis Hanson, and neither is Tucker.
I will give you that. He's not. Tucker is a truth seeker. That is how I see him. Pure.
Oh my God.
He is, though. No. You don't listen to him carefully then. I listen to him very carefully. I think he is genuinely and sincerely seeking the truth. I think he's asking the questions. I think he puts a lot of doubt out there because there is a lot of doubt to have out there. You know what I mean? What is the truth? What are the motives behind some of the things that happen? I think he's actually at his heart, I think he's a pacifist, really. And I think I am a little bit of that myself, although I don't think that actually works in this society. But I think that he thinks a lot of things. His narrative about World War II is that after World War II, everything changed. That was like the fall of like Europe as a basically, religious, now it's become this secular, fractured, group of countries. I mean, I think he sees that was the beginning of all of this fracturing and fragmenting.
So you're saying Tucker and Daryl Cooper are right over all the historians out there?
No, I didn't say that.
But that's what you're alluding to. So hold on. Let's do I'm throwing a curveball here. Let's watch this because you brought up Victor Davis Hanson,
who I love too.
Who doesn't? We all love Victor.
He's the best.
If you look at a number of things
Can you hear that?
Tucker's done,
Yep.
He went to Russia and he went to a supermarket in Moscow, and he basically, the theme of that was, we deprecate the Russians, but if you look at what they're doing okay. This supermarket is clean. It's got a lot of stuff, and they are not nihilists. They're not ashamed of their, I guess, Christianity or their whiteness. They're not a diverse people. So that was something that raised red flags. And then he went over to Bethlehem. This was a very controversial move because once the West Bank was turned over to the Palestinian Authority, they went into Bethlehem, which was a tourist bonanza, and it had been really packed under Israeli control. Free people wanted to come in, they were safe, and they began harassing Christians. And Christian Palestinians have left en masse Bethlehem, and it sort of died economically because of their absence. But Tucker went over and talked to a Palestinian Christian who, to stay there, had exemptions from the Palestinian Authority, i.e. the suggestion he was sort of like a Vichy Frenchman or something. And he said on record that Israel drove out all the Christians in their and that's not true.
And so what Victor is saying is Tucker took this one word, this one guy, and built a whole premise off of one guy. Victor's saying, Victor, as you heard earlier, told the truth of why the Christians fled. They were being harassed or being threatened. Tourism was dying because nobody was coming to visit. They had no choice. So Tucker takes one guy and builds a whole premise. Let's keep going.
Then he had Daryl Cooper on, who said it was the most well-known World War II historian. He's never written a book he's just written a book on the internet. I think it's on Twitter. And he said some outrageous things that were demonstrably untrue. Winston Churchill was a terrorist. They bombed the Black Forest and killed a bunch of civilians deliberately. That was a very complicated operation. It wasn't aimed at civilians. It was aimed at storage depots for the invasion of France by the Nazis. Anyway, that person that he had on was not a recognized authority on World War II. And
Tucker said the most important historian of World War II in modern history because he's read a couple of books. This is a guy we all know always comes with receipts. And he's a good friend of Tucker, but even he has had enough. Let's keep going.
He said about the German army going into Ukraine and being ill-equipped to handle 2 million prisoners, and therefore they died out of ineptness rather than premeditated agendas. That was false. They had something called the Hunger Plan written down as a doctrine, the German army did, and the idea of killing commissars, killing Jews, and shipping food and starving Ukraine was pre-planned. And then he had David Cullum, etc. So the question is, what is he doing?
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's reviving the Buchanan America First isolationism. And the MAGA people, I think what Tucker wants to do is he wants people to go on record to either say, I agree with the Buchanan neo-isolationist and America First, or I'm more like Trump. This is a war for Trump and MAGA. And he's saying that he's trying to bring Trump over to this. And what would that mean? It would mean, Ukraine, let it go. I'm not going to get involved in Israel with taking out that nuclear facility for Israel. It's not even a Jacksonian foreign policy. It's a Pat Buchanan. And so there's a lot of tension in the MAGA ranks because he's very close. Tucker's very close to J.D. Vance. I think his son works for him. He's very close to Don Jr. He's got the ear of Trump. And the thing about Trump is Trump doesn't say, I'm going with him or them. He just lets them fight it out in the arena and see which side wins, which has the more applicable strategy. Not that he doesn't have his own views, but the fact that he's said that he's going to support NATO, and the fact that he took out the Ukrainian nuclear program, and the fact that he hit the Houthis shows you that he's not a neo-isolationist.
And there you have it. That's our guy there. We love that guy.
Yeah, we do.
David Hanson. Even he is one of the few that isn't afraid to go on record. You know, most people don't want to, because Tucker has this big crowd. But I see what Tucker's doing, and that is because of my upbringing and seeing two dictators and seeing how they become revisionists in their history. Seeing Noriega completely change how America helped Panama, how they created an infrastructure for Panamanians. So Tucker's doing the same thing. He's creating straw men at Israel, at a Winston Churchill, with people who aren't qualified to speak on it. You can speak on it, but you got to bring the facts. And as Victor Davis Hanson says, they lie about the facts. They take an event and they twist it around. And as far as Winston Churchill, he was no saint. He wanted America to get into the war. If I remember my history, one of the many books I've read, whereas Daryl Cooper has probably just read the summary on the internet, you know, the KKK internet, you know, summary of Winston Churchill. He may or may not have known about Pearl Harbor in advance and not said anything, because he knew without the United States in World War II, the Brits were likely doomed. You know, so he was no saint, and they tossed him out of office once the war was over. Right. Horrible time leader. He's what you wanted during the war.
That's right.
But as you see with Victor Davis Hanson, he doesn't sugarcoat it. He says they're lies. This guy Daryl Cooper wrote a book on the internet. He did like a 30-volume, you know, I don't know, podcast or series, but not based on history, but based on how he interpreted the facts to make Hitler look good. This is the same guy who sat there and said Hitler grew up in Germany as a kid. He did not grow up in Germany, Austria. You know, and he said that on Joe Rogan. The guy's an incompetent buffoon who's been given a platform by Tucker. So yes, that is a cardinal sin. You don't do that. Now let's go to Nick Fuentes. Would you give a KKK member a platform?
Sure.
Would you? So you would sit there and give him a platform to dispute?
I would talk to anyone to try to learn where they're coming from. Absolutely. I'm interested in why people think the way they do. I just am. That's who I am at my core. At my core, I would talk to someone to see how they developed, what their thinking is all about. And I do think Nick Fuentes, honestly, he's extremely articulate. He's extremely compelling. And so I was interested in that interview, and I stayed with it the entire time. I mean, do I agree with, if he is really a pro-Stalin? I mean, he said, I love Stalin, and Tucker never even said, well, what do you mean by that? And I was like, why doesn't Tucker sort of take this and run with it and find out why he said that?
Because Tucker inside was going, yeah, baby, yeah. Oh, you know? How do you know? How do you know? You don't. I say that based on everything Tucker said the last year and a half.
What?
I say that based on everything Tucker spewed the last year and a half. Look, I don't need Nick Fuentes to understand why white kids are gravitating towards him. We all know it. I've explained this multiple times.
Yeah, the Lost Boys. Yes, we know it. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't need that, because that's why they're gravitating. When they don't see a future for themselves, when you're blamed for everything, you're going to gravitate to somebody who's saying it's not your fault neither. The same reason blacks gravitate to the victim mentality, and many of them do, Latinos do. Whites are gravitating to Nick Fuentes, and Tucker's encouraging it. I don't believe
not encouraging. Giving someone an opportunity to speak their mind is not encouraging it.
Then you question them, you challenge them. Why are you a hateful bigot? Why are you racist? He did none of that. He did none of that. He didn't even try that. And Tucker's excuse, well, you do your own interviews. No, Tucker, you also have a responsibility. Journalists have responsibilities once they choose to do that, and that's to speak truth to power. Well, what Tucker is doing is no different than what the New York Times has done to Trump for 10 years. He's creating a revisionist history. And people, I subscribed to Tucker the first year to support him. I let that subscription go away. You know, he avoided confronting Fuentes on the Holocaust denial and the Jewish conspiracy claims. You know, he sparked Republican risks.
Wait, in his interview with Tucker, Nick Fuentes did not say that he denied the Holocaust.
No, he said it in so many words.
Okay, but
See, that's the other technicality you people and Democrats push. Well, he didn't technically say that. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. It's like the seditious six. They didn't tell the troops, you don't follow anything Trump says. But that's kind of what they were saying. You know, it's like you talk about life being complex. Well, you can look at that and break it down. It's not really complex, but they're layering it so they can sit there and have plausible deniability. I didn't really say that specifically, you know.
Tucker did you watch his interview with Sean Ryan interviewed Tucker recently, just like a week ago? Did you watch it?
I haven't watched Sean Ryan in a while because he's another guy who doesn't do a hard interview. Has great guests, boy, but he does no hard interviews neither. But he's got great guests.
He is great.
God, I know so. The guy never pushes back.
He lets people talk, though. And then people like me, listeners like you, we can make our own judgments based on what they're saying. Do you know what I mean? Like, no, I agree. Maybe Sean Ryan doesn't push that hard, but he let Tucker talk. And if you listen to Tucker, and I did, that entire interview, and I thought he was so compelling, so interesting. I believe he's had a real conversion of his heart, like a real Christian conversion, the kind that makes you look at yourself and see your own sin. And you know what I'm saying? I find him to be completely believable, and I believe him. And isn't that the most important thing?
Well, that's the danger. That's the danger
no,
of people like Trump. And he has a conversion to that white hood, to that Nazi. But that's how I view Tucker now.
He's not.
And I used to support him.
Insane. Talk. What's that?
Look,
word?
here's my problem. You know, you sit there saying you got to let everybody platform. Do you know how dictatorships come into being? Nobody challenges the guy spewing the lies. Nobody does. And that's how dictators rise to power. Nobody challenged Hitler early on. Nobody challenged Mussolini early on. Nobody challenged Hugo Chavez as he rose up the ranks. And then as Maduro took over, well, Maduro's tough because he just took over. Chavez is handpicked. But nobody challenges. And that's how the hate starts. That's how the racism starts. That's how the bigotry. Nobody challenges these people. You know, David Dukes, that's a guy. Nick Fuentes is just a young man's version of David Dukes. You know, and yes, the one thing about Trump is what Victor Davis says is perfectly true about Trump. He's not. Why should he step in and wade amongst a fight like that? Yeah. Sure. So Trump's just doing what's best for Trump. But at the end of the day, and Fuentes has made so Fuentes has also claimed interracial marriage is degenerate. You know, arguing it undermines Western culture. You know, I've said that to some of my friends who are black. I go, look, I don't care who you marry, but you have to understand something. In the long term, you're literally when you're 10% of the population and you have a lot of interracial marriages, you're diminishing the culture of Black America. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's something that I tell people you should be aware of that can happen. But I don't care. There are tons of interracial marriages in my family, immediate and all through it. You know, hell, some people would sit there and say, William, you're in the interracial marriage. You're married to a white woman and you've got Black, Latino, Asian, and everything in you. You know, so I never thought that.
Thing about Nick Fuentes, he's still a kid.
Stop. That kid is 26, 27, 28. He's young in certain sense.
Change a lot. His opinions and viewpoints. He's not married. He doesn't know that much about the world yet. I
get that, but that's not relevant right now. You're just making an excuse for why he's a racist and a bigot right now. He also said Black people are inherently less intelligent, a direct racist stereotype. He called for America to remain a white Christian nation, rejecting pluralism.
Nick Fuentes, but I will defend Tucker. I will defend that he just allowed someone to have a conversation and speak their mind. And I think you're being a little bombastic about him because I don't think he's a Nazi at all. By the way, a lot of people think
I'm being as sarcastic as I'm being as bombastic as Tucker is. I am. Tucker, are you trying to tell me Tucker's not bombastic?
No, I'm not trying to say that. But I'm saying that.
But you said it in a negative sense to me.
Okay, that's true. That's true. I'm going to give you that. That's true. But I'm just going to say that I think that you're taking some of these like very controversial interviews and not looking. He talks to all kinds of really interesting people. He has all kinds of really interesting interviews. He did a whole documentary series on 9/11. It was absolutely fascinating.
Right.
I
Again, I actually had a subscription to Fox, whatever their thing is. I forget what it's called now.
I like him better now. Tucker,
but hold on. Okay, so let's watch this. Okay. Let's watch this. Okay. Tucker exposed. I'll say what? I don't remember who, what, say, do what. Hey, do that. This is Tucker. Okay. Tucker at his finest, people. I call this segment Tucker versus Amnesia.
Dave Rubin, whoever that is.
But I don't have the control that you have, which is wonderful.
Who's Tommy Robinson? You know Tommy Robinson. He seems like a fraud to me.
Tommy Robinson, thank you very much for agreeing to talk to us.
Laura Loomer, that's world's creepiest human. I don't even know where she came from or who she is exactly. Seth, whatever, from the Babylon Bee.
Yeah. Seth, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Quotes from that Josh Hammer guy.
Well, that's incredible. Yeah. Josh Hammer.
And that brings me to the final caveat of my belief of Tucker and what he's become: a liar, a flat out liar. Who is this Lauren Murrow? Then he'll denigrates him. You know, that part wasn't shown those, but he'll go on to denigrate him. Dave Rubin, he did over an hour long. The other ones, he had guests. He was DM or texting with Laura Loomer, and then he pretends he doesn't know these people. How do you defend that?
You know what? That was honestly really disturbing to me, because I saw that and thought to myself, that as a person who really watches his show regularly, and I like him very much, to think that he's been dishonest in that way. You're saying that each one of those times he'd already met that person, interviewed that person, then claimed to not know them?
Okay, here we go. 2023, he texted Laura Loomer. 2025 podcast, he called her the creepiest human and act like he didn't know her. Tommy Robinson interviewed him because says he doesn't know who he is. If you follow politics like I do and like Tucker does other, you know who Tommy Robinson is, whether you met him or not. You know, Dave Rubin. He sat down for a whole over an hour show with Dave. Tucker is a liar. He is thinking like old TV. Hey, once it's taped and it's a can, nobody's ever going to see it again. The internet never forgets, old man. You know, and Tucker's probably younger than me, but that epitomizes who and what Tucker has become. A liar who is creating revisionist history and who is willing to platform but not push back. If you want to platform somebody, so for example, Barbara Walters, because it's in the can and now you'll never see it unless you go to the internet, interviewed Luis Farrakhan. She did not let him off the hook. She went at him because he's a racist. He wants extermination of white people and Jews. I mean, he said that publicly. She went after him. That's what journalists do. You expose these people. You expose them. Instead, he gave them a platform. And I think part of it's white fear, just like blacks fear for their lives right after the Civil War at times. I think there's a lot of white fear going on because blacks, Latinos, Democrats, the mainstream media are trying to put the onus of everything negative and bad on white Americans. And that's wrong. I defend white America. I tell people it's okay to be white. It's okay to be proud. But technically, you're not proud of being white. You're proud of being Irish. Italian, UK, British, Welsh. You're proud of your culture. That's okay. But they're trying to sit and say that's not. And I think that's what's driven Tucker over the edge.
Okay.
I really think that.
William, I will say something that I think is an important, line in the sand, because I'll defend his right to interview anybody he wants to interview. And even if he's not going to push back hard, maybe he's going to let that person just speak their platform, speak their mind, speak their position. I cannot defend someone who lies. That I have to honestly like.
Well, okay. So what are you saying? What are you saying with that last clip? In fact, what I loved about the last clip the best.
No, I'm saying that it makes me think of him differently.
It should.
And obviously, anybody that does that loses credibility with me, because Sean Ryan, you're right. Maybe he doesn't push back hard enough at times. What about Sean Ryan still, and hopefully he maintains this integrity.
Exactly. You're right. You're right. Integrity. I love Sean Ryan for that.
So do I. And unless if he holds on to that, then he's going to have me as a loyal viewer. That's what I look for in someone. So.
And I don't not watch Sean Ryan. My wife was his biggest fan, because she doesn't really watch TV anymore unless I come up, honey, I'm ready to take a break and we'll watch a half-hour comedy. She's on the internet and she'd watch Sean Ryan for a couple years.
Not
and I'd come up.
anymore?
No, she got tired of him not pushing back when he had a couple of controversial. Well, why isn't he asking this? Why isn't he asking that? When you let people have unfettered access and to spew a lie, that is horrible. That's horrific, because your job, I don't care if you're a podcaster or a journalist, when you have a large following and you profess to be a truth teller, to want to bring things, you have a responsibility to do that. And that's what Tucker has done. That's what Sean Ryan has done. And Sean Ryan has come out and said, well, I let him talk. Then I stopped watching. Now I'll watch certain things. Like I learned about, and the reason I loved it was because as a former military guy, I'm like, that's true. When he talked about the gear, how the CIA, how Intel worked, so I understood that. So I love that. But certain guests, you got to push back. Whoa. You're saying this, but reports say this.
Yeah.
It's like Tucker. Has anybody pushed back Tucker? Tucker, whoa, bro. You interviewed her just last year.
Hey, well, speaking of pushing back, Candace Owen has been out there spewing a narrative about Charlie Kirk. No, and Turning Point's having her on next week, and I'll be watching that.
Yeah, they shouldn't have had her on. They shouldn't. You shouldn't give. She's lost it. And here's the thing: Candace Owens has a sordid past before she became a conservative, and I think what Candace Owens I think she's just a bitter woman. TP USA, she left, wasn't involved in that. If she was such great friends with Charlie, why wasn't she at his funeral? I don't care what you say. If one of my best friends died, I don't care if they didn't. There's a friend of mine who I no longer talk to. The day he passes, I will go to his funeral. I will sit in the back. I won't say a word. Yeah. Exactly. She didn't do any of that. And what she's doing too, releasing the texts and all that, she's destroying his legacy. She's making him look bad in certain ways. Because here's the thing. Off camera, you and I and G and others, we talk and we're a bit more loose with our comments and all that because we're amongst. And we're a little bit more careful on camera. That's not you, me, or G. Oh my God. That's human nature. Everybody does that. Obama's been caught doing that. Yeah. Tell Pluto in there when I'm back in power, win this re-election. Yeah. I'll get on my knees for him. Yeah. That was caught. So they all do it. And so Candace is just hurting his legacy. And I think she's just a grifter. I don't pay her any attention. But her and Tucker can literally affect this election coming up. The positive is we're seeing more and more the disconnect of the internet with reality. To give you a sports analogy, there's a lot of political issues or nonsense, political nonsense around Shadur Sanders. That is Deion Sanders' son, quarterback Cleveland Browns. So he finally got to start. Everybody expected sold out, this, that. It was just another regular game. And even the analysts are saying, wow, there's a difference with the internet and all the fight and hoopla with Shadur and the actual Browns fan. And I don't want to get off the topic too much. In fact, I want to close it out. But there is a difference. But if the Republican Party doesn't get their act together, strong people like Tucker and Candace, who could have helped get people to the voting booth, are now going to keep people from going to the voting booth. Because what Tucker is lying to the world, Trump is also our ambassador to the world. The United States has dealings with the world, and I'm sorry, people, since 1979, Iran has been the funder of terrorism that has killed Americans. I don't think we should have gone into Iraq, but I also don't think, I think if he had a chance to take out the Khomeini, then he should have let Israel. So I don't always agree with his decisions, but Tucker's a buffoon if he believes we need to be isolationists. If we are isolationists, the bad guys will take over the world, and we will literally be one person on an island.
We'll be subjugated by them.
Yes, they will subjugate us through the global world, through the global economy. You know?
And all I'm saying to you is, like, I will always listen to the contrarian's opinion. I mean, I'm interested in what all sorts of different kinds of people say, but it doesn't. And then I glean all of that, and I process it myself, and I make up my mind. I watch Candace. I'm curious. By the way, I think she's totally right about Brigitte Macron. I'm sorry, someday we'll talk about it, but I totally think that he's a man.
Oh, I do too. But to me, that's not important enough.
It is important though. It's, you know why? I care? I don't actually, because I care about the lie. That's what I care about. I don't actually care if he's a man or whatever, but I care about the fact because they'll lie about something like that. They'll lie about anything. And that's
but see, that's a given though, Lynette. Don't you think that's a given?
Well, you're saying that Trump doesn't. So then why do you think Trump isn't?
I didn't say Trump doesn't. All these politicians Trump has made decisions I don't care for neither, you know?
Okay, well, that's different than saying he sometimes doesn't tell the truth all the time. Right? That's
omitting the truth is the same thing as lying, you know? And Trump has done that. And sometimes they do it for the greater good. Sometimes they don't, you know? And I always love showing this picture here. You know, this is me with my good friend Candace Owens.
Oh, I want to see this. I'm very excited.
I've shown it before.
You were.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where they had the VIP and you go up to her and take a picture. She got paid $10,000. The San Diego County GOP that doesn't have a pot to pee in paid her $10,000 to come in, and I don't even know if they broke even, you know, to get her, you know. But I paid my $70.
Did you like her back then?
Yes, I like what she was a young black voice conservative who's able to look. I'm sorry, a white person is not going to be able to go to the ghetto unless you're charismatic like a Trump and sway blacks. But a conservative black can, who's successful. It's like a Latino. I'll go to any Latino barrio and I'll sway them. A black won't, a white won't. I mean, they can, but it's much harder. So yes, but she's gone off the deep end and she's destroying Charlie Kirk's legacy and of what TPUSA. And I'm sorry, I just think there's this hatred of Israel.
Why
and I'm
don't
sorry.
you think that it has something to do with finding out the truth? You think she's really just grifting trying to get views?
The best grifters take a kernel of the truth and they run with it to grift. That's why. I don't think she cares about the truth. You know, I don't. I think she's a bitter, butthurt girl over how her career's gone, and she shouldn't be. She's still highly successful. 4 million people.
Podcaster. Why is she bitter at all? She's doing great.
Because she's not with TPUS, which is a monster organization now that dwarfs what she's doing. And Daily Wire is the same. She's a player, but she's not at their height anymore. And I was on her side because I think Ben Shapiro would throw an American under the bus for Israel. He may talk America first and this or that, but if push came to shove, he would throw me, you, every American under the bus for 13 silver shillings for Israel. You know, he would do that. Yeah.
You know what? Honestly, William, I mean, I know we got to close this part out. It's been a fascinating conversation. I love the Daily Wire. I agree with Ben on everything that he talks about in terms of our culture.
Right.
I'm with you. I agree with what you just said, and that's what has me with a little bit of distrust toward him because I think he would. I'm sorry.
No, I agree with you, but Tucker's 10 times over that line, and you have no distrust over Tucker. It shows that you picked a side.
No, it doesn't show that at all because you just told me tonight about something that he lied about, and I told you that will change my thinking about something. When I believe, I've been watching Ben for a long time. I'm a big fan of his, and then. What you just said is true. I started to realize he would throw, as you said, me or you under the bus, right? And I actually agree with that. He might not be able to even see that in himself. So I don't fault him for that, William. I really don't.
I do.
Well,
if you're in that position, you got to be self-aware, or the people, your handlers, you know, your inner circle should be aware to tell you.
Tucker out and out knew that he was lying, met these people and said, oh, I don't know who that is. Well, you know what? He lost credibility with me. So
Tucker's like that married man. His mistress comes up. Hey, how you doing? Who are you? I don't know you.
Tucker just lost one of his bigger fans. I'm going to have to write to him actually and be like, I want to know.
You know what? You should videotape it and have that music.
Seriously, he's going to hear from one.
And that's not the only person he's done that to. In fact, the Tommy Robinson producer goes, what the hell is Tucker talking about? I handled that. I personally talked to him and we booked him. You know, so yeah.
That's so troubling to me because again, we can disagree all day long. You have to have integrity. You can have your opinion. I think you're entitled to it. You and I can disagree. If you're going to out and out lie, instead, the internet, it's all there. Everything you've ever said. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So you can't pretend.
Look, I'm sorry. Again, I'm not going to lie. I saw two dictators, and that has completely shaped how I look at
yes, of course.
and when you don't challenge somebody and you give them a platform, all you're doing is helping their vile, evil ways to grow. And your excuse that, well, I just wanted to speak. No. If you know what Tucker is saying, I just wanted to speak. So you're saying by not speaking that racism's okay, his hatred of brown people, black this, black that. By not challenging them, you're giving them a platform to speak to a new audience. Because right now, white America is on a fragile bent that can go a lot of ways negatively. And that could result in a civil war. Maybe not now, tomorrow, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And then it's not just white Americans. You have the Europeans, you have Latinos. Brown people mostly look at themselves as closer to white America than they do to black America. We don't want that. We want to avoid that. We've got to work with each other. But when you have Democrats creating tribalism amongst blacks and Latinos to go against whites, and then you have the rise of the Nick Fuentes and the Tucker Carlsons and the Daryl Coopers, that rise, I don't need to hear Nick Fuentes go, well, why is this happening, Nick? I know why it's happening. I've read enough. I've experienced enough. I know why it's happening. When you crap on a culture, when you crap on a people, they will only take it for so long.
Yeah.
History, the French, let them eat cake. They said, biatch, here's what you're going to eat, the guillotine. Eventually they rebelled. And how did the French Revolution come about? They finally saw America have the cojones to do their own revolution and lead. In fact, one of our greatest allies, a general, went to the French Revolution, helped with that, eventually got guillotined because power corrupts and all these people were mad with power and mob mentality. We don't want none of that. And the rise of the Daryl Coopers, the Tucker Carlsons, the Nick Fuentes, the Candace Owens with the anti-Semitism, and I'm sorry, I know Catholics believe that Jews are the chosen one. I'm not of that faith. But I also believe that Israel is our greatest ally. They are our eyes and ears. They are our intel. They have helped us more than we have, than they have hurt us, because they have hurt us by stealing our own nuclear technology, the Liberty fiasco.
I thought you were going to say they've helped us more than we've helped them.
No. Without us, they would cease to. See, that's the other thing. Without us, they cease to exist. They can say whatever they want. They can say whatever the hell they want. Without America, without us Christians, they die. That's how it, and that's about it, people. Any final words on Tucker?
No. Except I'm reaching out to him. I'm calling him out. I'm calling him out right now, Tucker. I want to know why you would lie to your audience. Because
I got to be honest. So you don't forget. We got to watch it one more time.
Okay, you're terrible.
Dave Rubin, whoever that is.
But I don't have the control that you have, which is wonderful.
Who's Tommy Robinson?
You know Tommy Robinson.
He seems like a fraud to me.
Tommy Robinson, thank you very much for agreeing to talk to us.
Laura Loomer, that's world's creepiest human. I don't even know where she came from or who she is exactly.
Seth, whatever, from the Babylon Bee.
Yeah. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Quotes from that Josh Hammer guy.
Well, that's incredible. Yeah. Josh Hammer.
I could have that on a loop all day long.
Oh, you could, like a little ticker going round and round and round.
Because to me, it just completely epitomizes Tucker the liar. Tucker, the one who's willing to say anything because he thinks you're too stupid, people. See, Tucker's the worst. It's like, actually, Nick Fuentes is a better example. The greatest grifters, whether it's Obama, Fuentes, David Dukes, Al Sharpton, Luis Farrakhan, Bill Clinton, they're able to take a kernel of the truth. And actually, I'm not going to put Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton would sit there and lie about a lot of things. But when it came to America, he loved America. There was never any doubt. He was a selfish guy who enriched himself. But when these big decisions came about, and that was partly because he was forced to because of a Republican Congress, but he saw the better ways. But a lot of these people, they'll take a kernel of the truth and twist it into a false narrative and get what they want and spew a narrative. That's what makes grifting that's what makes the ultimate comment. When Obama first came on the scene, I kept trying to tell my friends, the Obamacare is not what he's saying it is. All prices will increase because the taxes have to go up. to subsidize everything. And then they're subsidizing the healthcare agencies. I mean, big pharma, I mean, the hospitals, all of that, because they don't have enough money to take care of these people or the resources. So and sure enough, I went from $3,000 a month to $15,000. Yeah.
But okay, we got to go back to that ticker though, because when he says like, Josh Hammer, who's that? And maybe he doesn't mean it like, I don't know who that is, but like, who's that? Do you know what I'm saying? Like if I said to you right now, like, G, well, who the heck is G Mangani? Like, of course, I know who he is.
Do you really think he was saying that about every single one of those people?
I just don't. I know his style. And of course, I don't want to believe that Tucker is a liar. I don't want to believe that. So
despite the evidence being there, that's called rationalization.
No, it's not. No, it's
not. It is.
That
is. You're rationalizing away his lie. Yeah. You're I mean, you heard Victor Davis Hanson. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true. Tucker has, and I was planning on being more neutral. But at the end of the day, what this episode did is
you can't take it that I like Tucker.
No. It's like the truth I can't help but speak what I see as the truth eventually. I can't hold back anymore. I'm like too old to this. That's who that is. He's a lot. I view Tucker as when Democrats would sit there and describe all these white people, they're all bad. They're this. That's how I view Tucker now. I really do. He's not good for society. He's not good for the people. And I did not view Tucker like that before. Right. But I listened to him. I'm listening to Noriega Jr. here. I'm listening to Omar Torrijos Jr. I'm listening to Farrakhan when he talks about the Jews.
I thought he was being open-minded and giving people a chance to think about things from a different perspective. And I think that's really important. Like you and I, it's not even healthy for us to only be in our own.
You can, but you have to challenge it when you know that perspective is wrong. He goes, we'll have to revisit that. He's like, oh, we ran out of time. Oh, that's good. We don't have to revisit that. Yeah, Dick, I'm with you, baby. Yeah.
So you think sorry. That is like him confirming to Nick Fuentes, like rubber stamping him. That's how you take it.
It doesn't matter if it's the perception of how people see it. And he's hurting our cause, the bigger cause. Because now the Democrats can point to him and legitimately go anti-Semite, white supremacist. He platformed Nick Fuentes. Now, on the Democrats, I'm saying, well, you platform Luis Farrakhan. You quote Malcolm X. These are known racists who were derogatory towards the white culture. These are grifters. You platform Torre. You platform all these people. Why? Because you've allowed Black America to be racist and get away with it. You've allowed Latinos to be racist and get away with it. You have to challenge everybody. But because of the stigma on the white past history and slavery, it's never going to be allowed with whites. And now whites are saying, no, screw you. Now they're saying if Black people can do it, if Latinos can do it, if they can play the race card, and we're seeing actual discrimination against whites, because there is open discrimination against whites right now, we can do it too. And we need to maintain the high ground and call it out when Blacks do it, call it out when Latinos do it, when Asians do it, and call it out when whites do it. We can't join in. You need to buy the book, what's it called? Red Thomas Sowell, Rednecks and Something. He explains it all in that book. It's a great read. Let me look it up real quick. See what it's called. Rednecks.
Trying to educate me here.
Because Thomas Sowell.
I love him. And I've read one of his books, not all of them, but only one. Like
Thomas Sowell was a Marxist out of Harlem, pro-Black this, pro-Black that, then self-educated himself and Black rednecks and white liberals, and educated himself looking at the data.
You have to look at though, or we have to look at, William, at why so many boys find Nick Fuentes compelling, why they're following him. And I know we sort of talked about it briefly, but look, did you hear the latest stat? I'm sure you have. They're talking all about like the lost boys and how boys are being left behind.
All of that.
First time home buyer now, the age of a first time home buyer is almost 40 years old.
Yeah.
That's a problem. They're in their basements. They're not going to college. They're left out of society.
Because society has left them out. When you denigrate them, and then when you sit there and promote everybody above them, and you don't give them a fair shot, because that's what's happening. I remember in the 70s, the first lawsuit, there was a it was for a black individual. It was at a USC here in California. Go back, people. It was the first case of I guess anti-racism. I guess you say the slot was for a black minority, but there weren't any blacks qualified, so they didn't fill the slot. And the guy said, "You got a slot here. I qualify for it, but because I'm not black, you're saying I can't have it. So you're going to go and not fill that." And he won. It was seen as discrimination. So what we have to do is create a meritocracy system. And then we have to look at the ills. Why are blacks not doing as well education-wise? I know why. The data is there, and we fix that. And that puts them on a level to start competing. You do it with Latinos. Then you go into the rural areas where the trailer parks and the white trash, you do the same thing. But we don't do that. We reward the Somalians, the grifters, the con artists, who are all white, black, foreigners, whatever, take advantage. And then we sit there and lie to us, and we try to guilt you. Well, that's compassion in there. You got to have compassion, you little racist bigot. You don't have compassion, so you're a racist bigot. And that's what they do. And people get tired of it, and so they don't want to get in that fight. Now, because of what's happening to young boys, they're seeing it. And think about it. Do you want 70% of American white boys that go along the Nick Fuentes line? Because that's going to create violence.
No, I don't actually.
Yeah.
And I wish they had someone more admirable, like a Charlie Kirk, quite honestly.
Mm-hmm. And look, what did they do? They destroyed Charlie Kirk. Why? It's like Big John. I was livid. He was trying to sit there and say Charlie Kirk's a racist. Some of the conversations Big John and I had, I'm like, bro, look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. Because again, when you say things off camera versus on camera, all Charlie Kirk was said, believe in God. Oh, he's trying to force his religion down our throats. Or he's saying it's okay to be white. It is okay to be white. It's okay to be a white Irish, a white Puerto Rican, a red bone black. I had white people try to tell me you can't use the term mulatto. I'm like, I grew up with that term. I got relatives who are mulatto, meaning brown and white. Well, no, I deemed that a racist term, so you can't use it. I'm like, oh, and I told this guy, you're white. Get the hell away from me. You will never dictate to me what a Latino term is and what I can use it. It's like all the whites who try to tell me, oh, no, William, you need to go by Latinx. Even Latino women are like, get the hell out of here. But it's all these white liberals. That's why I always, I say it half seriously now with the white suburban woman. Y'all are stop helping us. You're killing us. My people are still in the barrio. Blacks are still in the ghetto. Poor white people in the rural area, not in the suburbs, are in the trailer parks. Stop helping us, white suburban lady. You're killing us. And I saw that firsthand with my mother. We lived in the suburbs. I saw how all the white ladies treated her like she was inferior. Now, some of it was racism. A minority of it was some of them just didn't realize that's how they were treating her because they really wanted to help her. And I don't fault them. But even as a kid, I knew who that racist woman was looking at my mom. And then some of them were shocked. You're Latina? You look like, hey, you look Korean. And my mom does look Korean. We have Asian in our family. Which is another big lie that Americans have no clue. Latinos aren't short and brown. Latinos are cosmopolitan because Spain conquered the world and spread their seed everywhere. The French conquered another part of the world and spread their seed everywhere. So Latinos tend to be mixed. In Panama, a slave ship got shipwrecked. All the blacks went to a certain part of Panama. Then they spread out. So we have so we are literally the mutts of the world. But America says we're all short and brown. But I'll tell you this much. You don't see the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Latinos crossing the borders. So we deal with our own issues in our own countries. A black man pointed that out to me, a conservative black guy. He goes, no. He goes, you're right, William. He goes, but you don't see the blue-eyed, blonde-haired Latino, Mexican crossing the border, do you? And I was like, oh, shit, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Right. And so my point is, all the whites, we call them Rabi Blancos in Panama because they came and they owned all the plantations, and they still do to this day because it's passed down. So we all have our class warfare in every country. So Americans, we are oblivious to how the real world actually works. So I have seen what Tucker is doing. I've seen it played out in other countries. That's why I'm so aghast at what he's doing. And that video to me epitomizes exposing him for that, because he thinks, because those are people who think you're so stupid that you're going to believe whatever they say. And what's sad is there are a lot of people like that even Trump. I love Trump. You can't blindly follow Trump. You can't.
No, you can't.
All right. And with that and that, let's close this out.
All right.
All right, guys, we covered one topic. It was controversial, which I should have expected because I know you're with Tucker. And I'm glad I put that video of Victor Davis Hanson. I did not plan it, but when you started talking about that, I was like, well, let's. We both like Victor.
I'm a fan, yeah.
And he did not hold back on Tucker. He was very polite, very kind. He's friends with Tucker. Tucker probably doesn't view him as a friend now.
I'd love to see those two have a conversation.
Yeah, and then we saw Tucker pretending he doesn't know people. Why he does that? He does that to denigrate them.
Let's get Victor on the show. Let's get Victor.
Yeah, but he does that to denigrate them from this perspective. By not acknowledging them, they're beneath him. That's why he does it. I've seen that done over and over and over. Classic authoritarian con artist tactic. With that,
I don't like anything that's prideful like that. I think that's prideful. I don't like that.
That's like me going a year from now, we go our separate ways. And that Ross, who the hell's that, man?
Ouch.
Let's move on. That's what that would be. It'd be denigrating you. Yeah. All right, people. That's it for our show. One topic, 3 topics actually. We talked about, or 2 topics. Talked about briefly. We talked about J6 and the Somalians and Tucker. And you saw a side of me. I'm not longer sugarcoating it. We have issues with racism, bigotry from not just white culture, but black culture, but Latino culture, Asian culture. We have bigotry from the Somalian culture, from Middle Eastern cultures. My point to you people is there's bigotry and racism everywhere. We have religious bigotry. You know, I'm not picking on Catholics. They always come to my mind as a former Catholic. They view their religious as above all others. Mormons view their religious as above others. You know, Muslims, they don't coexist. Everywhere Islam is gone, they've taken over and destroyed and killed off the enemy. So there's bigotry, hate, and racism everywhere. And we have to work together. We have to come together. And I'm not going to lie, as a Latino with black, white, rich, poor, gay, straight, ugly, beautiful, in my family, we are a culture that can help lead us out of it. And hopefully we'll have more Latinos down the road showcase it. And maybe my family's unique. I had a Latino tell me, hey, William, you're actually an outlier within the Latino community. And I'm actually proud of that, because if my family can coexist, which we do, including the half Asian brother whose family was exterminated in Nagasaki, I have seen it all. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. Do not forget to check out grumblingsmedia.com. Follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify, and Pandora under the handle Grumblings Media. And for the beautiful Miss Annette Ross and myself, keep your heads on a swivel, because there's a lot of violence and a lot of bad things happening out there. And we will talk next week.